Skeletons of the Marital Closet by Tang. Chapter 1471. Natalie's scheme did not go as planned, Mary said. Not blaming me is a good start. I can't do much help to you. I've said before that life is a long journey, and you must walk it on your own. Parents, children, even loved ones can only accompany you for a portion of that journey. Natalie, from now on, I will see you once a year. This is my final act of motherly affection toward you. If you make mistakes, you must pay the price. Don't harbor resentment toward anyone. These are the consequences of your own actions, the seeds you've sown. Mary added, and one more thing. She looked into Natalie's eyes and said, in the future, don't refer to yourself as Gale's sister. Gale doesn't like that, and I want to respect her wishes. Besides, you two are barely sisters. Mary had acknowledged Natalie's current identity. If she did, would that not be accepting Heather? Natalie was taken aback. She hesitated and held back her tongue. Her strategy had unexpectedly failed. Mary actually accepted her current situation and showed no inclination to plead on her behalf. Furthermore, Mary asked her to stop calling Gale her sister because Gale wouldn't like it. It was indeed true that blood ties mattered. Mary loved Gale more and did not consider Natalie of much importance. All the talk about all daughters being equal was simply nonsense. Mary just loved Gale more and did not care about Natalie's feelings. Natalie was barely able to hold back her emotions. She knew that Mary, who prayed regularly and went to church, appeared kind-hearted and compassionate on the surface, but she could be more heartless than anyone else. Natalie spoke. No, Mom. You coming to see me once a year is already satisfying enough for me. She had just finished speaking when they heard a sudden burst of laughter. The laughter was exceptionally abrupt and clear within the hospital room. The laughter came from Gale. Natalie looked at her inquisitively, and even Mary seemed taken aback. Gale, what's going on? What was so funny? Was there something worth laughing at? They were having a heartfelt and emotional conversation. Should the mood not be touching and sentimental? Gale waved her hand. Nothing. I just sneezed. Yes, I sneezed. She would not admit that she had not been able to contain her laughter earlier. Natalie's expression was just too amusing. It was like she had swallowed a fly and was desperately trying to keep it down, unable to speak or spit it out. Gale saw right through Natalie's intentions. She was pretending to be understanding, filial, and mature, trying to manipulate Mary to intervene on her behalf to secure a lifeline. As Mary and Gale spoke, it was evident that Mary was quite likely not going to plead for her case. Natalie was grasping for straws, desperately attempting to find a solution through Mary, and she found herself in a pitiful situation. Chapter 1472. After all, Autumn's reputation had been tarnished. She was hoping Mary's influence might still carry some weight. Mary actually believed that Natalie had a sudden and profound realization, recognized her mistakes, and had no intention of asking Mary to plead for mercy. That unexpected twist left Natalie dumbfounded. She could not say much in response. Gale made a valiant effort to hide her urge to laugh. All right, Mom, you've met and said what needed to be said. Natalie needs to spend a lifetime atoning for her deeds, and she's admitted it herself. Natalie wanted to protest. What? You don't agree? Gale immediately raised her voice, suppressing her. Are you having second thoughts? No. My mother still has some affection for you, So I arranged this meeting. You can leave now, Gale said. Natalie would not be happy with just leaving it at that. She was clearly not satisfied with the outcome and did not expect Mary to not fall for her emotional manipulation. She should have expected that since Mary was not her birth mother. Matthew was rendered useless, yet kept pleading her cause. How come you're just standing there? Do you want the bodyguards to escort you out? Gale urged again. I'd like to talk to Mom a bit longer. Natalie definitely was not willing to leave so soon. She would not have the opportunity to see Mary again for who knows how long. Mary, who had been lying on the hospital bed, sat up and spoke with great solemnity. Natalie, my child, Gale is not a domineering person. She and I have similar personalities, and I understand where she is coming from. That's why I won't say much. Understanding? Mary nodded. Yes, as long as you genuinely repent, someday you'll regain your freedom and redeem yourself. Gale will forgive you willingly. Someday? When will that day come? It depends on your attitude. Natalie could not help but sneer inwardly. She wiped away a tear silently. Meanwhile, she seized the opportunity to observe her surroundings. 2 bodyguards stood by the door of the hospital room, and 2 more were stationed at the foot of the bed, keeping a vigilant eye on her at all times, never letting their guard down. She was standing on one side, and Gale was on the other side of the bed. Mary was in between. Natalie quickly assessed the situation. She wanted to make one final gamble. She wanted to get someone to intervene on her behalf, to make Gale suffer further, to try to turn the tide in her favor. Now was her chance. When else would she have such a good opportunity? Opportunities like these were rare. However, Gale was a bit too far from her. Her recent outburst and days of torment had taken a toll on her. She no longer had the strength she once did. She could take a risk and try to seize Gale. However, there was a risk that Gale might break free. That was why Natalie's gaze fell upon Mary. Mary was fragile and elderly. She happened to be standing next to Natalie. With just one move, she could reach her. If she held Mary hostage, her chances of success would be much higher. Chapter 1473. Moreover, if anything were to happen to Mary, Gale would lose her mother once again. The thought of both her adopted mother and biological mother leaving her in succession was enough to cause unimaginable pain. Natalie's blood boiled with excitement at the prospect of revenge, and she saw Mary as the perfect person to bear the burden of her actions. Natalie extended her hand, holding on to Mary's shoulder, and said, "Well then, Mom, I'll take my leave. Please take good care of your health and make sure to go out for a walk, all right?" "All right, you don't need to worry about me," Mary replied. Natalie's hand slowly moved upward. Her target was Mary's neck. Conveniently, there was a fruit knife on the nearby table. If she could grasp Mary's neck and position herself as a shield, then take a step back and quickly pick up the fruit knife as a weapon. That way, she would be halfway to success. Mary's life would be in her hands. No one knew what was going through Natalie's mind. Mary sensed Natalie's hand moving on her body, but could not pinpoint what was wrong. Just then, the hospital room door was suddenly pushed open without any warning. "Hello!" An unexpected voice shattered the room's silence, and all eyes turned toward the small figure standing at the entrance. It was Joshua. "What are you doing here, Joshua?" Gale asked, walking over quickly. Joshua turned around and playfully waved his hand, saying, "Ta-da! Allow me to introduce my grandpa." Peter entered the room, still catching his breath. Joshua, you walk too fast. I can't keep up. I was afraid of losing you, but I can't walk fast. I was eager to see my grandma, Joshua explained. Gale's father laughed and said, Your grandma isn't going anywhere. Not only grandma is here, but Big Beauty is here too. What an unexpected surprise, Joshua said. Gale squeezed his cheek and he made a silly face. Dad, isn't Joshua supposed to be at kindergarten right now? Why did you bring him to the hospital? Gale inquired. Peter explained. Joshua is here for a health check-up. During the previous school health check, something was abnormal, so he needed a check. I took the opportunity during my lunch break to bring him here. Yeah, Joshua nodded. Then he said that Grandma is also in this hospital, so I asked him to bring me to see her. Peter added, I thought since we were already here, we should pay a visit to Mary. We haven't met her yet, and Joshua was keen to meet her too, so we brought him along. On the way to the hospital, Peter had explained to Joshua about Mary's identity, making Joshua extremely excited to meet her. This led to Joshua entering the hospital room ahead of them. Gale asked, concerned, What? What did the doctor say? Is it serious? He seemed to have an iron deficiency. The doctor advised to eat more red meat to boost his iron levels. He also prescribed some nutritional supplements. Chapter 1474. Upon hearing this, Gale immediately pinched Joshua's ear and asked, Are you being picky with your food? Ouch, no! I eat all my meals on time every day, and I never waste a single grain of rice. My teacher says every grain is hard-earned. Cut it out. I know you too well. Both Joshua and Nicole had their picky eating habits. However, they had different preferences. Nicole disliked eating vegetables and loved all kinds of meats, while Joshua was the opposite, preferring vegetarian and light dishes. He could finish a bowl of plain rice. Therefore, Gale was quite concerned. She needed Nicole to eat more vegetables and Joshua to eat more meat. It's true. Ouch, 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 Grandpa! Please say something for me. I'm not picky, am I? Peter felt sorry for Joshua and patted Gale's hand, saying, What are you doing? Joshua is just a child. Why are you so harsh? Please let go. Well, it appeared that her son was more important than her. He slapped her hand. Gale released Joshua's ear. Peter pulled him closer, rubbing his earlobe gently. How are you? Does it hurt? While doing this, he cast a reproachful glance at Gale and said, Why are you so mean? His ear is all red. Dad! You can say what you want. There's no need to use physical force. Gale, this habit of yours is not good. You must change it. Joshua reassured Peter, saying, Don't blame her. It doesn't hurt at all. Gale did not know what to say. She had just witnessed the significance of a generational gap. All she did was pinch Joshua's ear once, and her father became so concerned and worried, treating him like a precious child. If he ever saw what she had actually done to Joshua, he would probably react even more badly. Dad, aren't you spoiling Joshua a bit too much? Gale said. What do you mean by spoiling? Clearly, it was you who were wrong. Joshua is obedient. He can eat independently, and he helps me in the kitchen, even playing chess so well in front of those arrogant old men. Isn't that great? He's almost 5 years old. Of course he can eat by himself. He doesn't need to be spoon-fed, right? With that, Gale turned to Mary and asked, Mom, take a look. You come and be the judge. Peter was completely taken in by Joshua, but this was Mary's first time seeing her grandson. She was a reasonable and fair person. She should offer some unbiased input. However, Gale had overestimated Mary. You shouldn't have pinched Joshua's ear. If you have something to say it properly. If you tell him a few more times, he'll listen. If he's iron deficient, then just supplement his diet with more iron, Mary said. Gale's protests were met with silence. It seemed like she was the odd one out. Joshua was the family's favorite. No big deal. I'm already used to it. It didn't hurt at all. That was not as bad as before, Joshua said. What? She used to pinch you harder? Does she also hit you? Peter asked. Dad! Did he really need to know this? Was it necessary? Chapter 1475. Seeing that Peter was about to criticize her, Gale quickly changed the subject. What a coincidence. I came to see Mom today and I didn't expect you to bring Joshua along. Dad, I just mentioned to Mom that in a couple of days, I'll bring Nicole and Joshua to visit her, to liven up this hospital room. Yeah, it's indeed quite a coincidence, he agreed. Joshua crossed his arms casually. I wish you had brought Nicole along too. Unfortunately, she sleeps like a pig in the afternoon. Mary was also pleasantly surprised. She had not expected to see her well-concealed grandson first. Joshua, come over to my side. Mary beckoned him over. Here I come, Grandma. Joshua ran toward the hospital room but hesitated when he saw Natalie. Hey, bad lady, why are you here? Natalie and Joshua locked eyes. She had seen this young boy many times before. He had lived with the Lefting family, and Aram had treated him exceptionally well, showering him with endless love, almost as if he were his own son. They did homework together, crafted things together, and Aram even attended his parent-teacher meetings. However, Natalie did not like Joshua. She found this boy to be somewhat harmless, yet for some reason, she did not like the look of him. Also, Joshua was not particularly close to her. Out of respect for Aram, Natalie had maintained peace with Joshua. However, they ran into each other again. Yes, Joshua, I didn't expect to meet again. Natalie looked at him. What did you call me? Bad lady. Why do you call me that? During the time you lived with the Lefting family, didn't I treat you well? Joshua sneered. Do you think I'm a gullible fool who can't see through your true colors? I'm just young, I'm not stupid. Natalie retorted. And what are my true colors? Let me list them for you. Joshua raised his fingers and began counting. You teamed up with Winnie, conspired against Nicole. You pretended to be gentle and virtuous in front of Uncle Aram, but privately, you were harsh and looked down on the family servants. Also, you always tried to drive me out and even tried to trick me into revealing secrets. I caught you talking on the phone with Winnie. You never admitted it. Oh, and you tried to hide Winnie's actions, but I was the one who first discovered and told Uncle Shawn. Natalie gritted her teeth. You discovered and told on me? Of course. You didn't expect that, did you? Joshua was very pleased with himself. You're wary of so many people, but you didn't keep your guard up against me. Natalie thought hard. But how could she have suspected the 4-year-old boy? No worries. You know now. It's not too late. Joshua shrugged. Let you see how clever I am. You're no match for me. He sauntered toward Mary's bed. Natalie called out, Wait. What? Joshua said. I couldn't figure it out back then, but now I get it. What now? I'm in a good mood, so I'll hear you out, he retorted. With his grandfather, grandmother, and mother around, he was truly in a good mood. Natalie hurriedly took a few steps forward to approach Joshua. Chapter 1476. However, her ankle restraints limited her movement. The moment she moved, two guards quickly surrounded her swiftly. Natalie had no choice but to stop and stand in place. She glared at Joshua. "Did you have anything to do with my poisoning? The one that Shawn mentioned?" The Lifting family staff were all handpicked by Natalie herself, and they knew her temperament well. None of them dared to cross her, and it was impossible for Shawn to infiltrate the Lifting family with spies in such a short time. However, she had been poisoned inexplicably. By the time Shawn informed her, the poison was already deep in her system, waiting for the right moment to take effect. How had Shawn poisoned her? Who among the Lifting family staff had the ability to continuously administer poison without her noticing? She had suspected Zoe before, as she was the only one who had resigned for several years before returning to the Lifting family as a servant, accompanied by Joshua, which had made her the prime suspect. Still, Zoe rarely entered the kitchen and only assisted with menial tasks, with no opportunity. Now, Natalie was rethinking her stance, and she realized she had completely overlooked Joshua. She had not even considered Joshua at all. Perhaps the least likely person had the best opportunity to administer the poison. "It was you, wasn't it? Joshua, you poisoned me. You're Shawn's spy. He gave you the task and you carried it out. Who would suspect a child? Who would pay attention to a child's every move? No one is on their guard against you, and you took the chance to poison my food every day. I suspected everyone, but I never suspected you. It's you, isn't it? It must be you." Joshua crossed his arms, maintaining his cool demeanor, bearing some resemblance to Shawn. "All right, since you've guessed it, I'll admit it. Yes, I did it. He asked me to put a little in your meals every day. So I followed his instructions. The kitchen staff all like me, and I move around freely inside. The amount of poison was very small and required time to accumulate. You wouldn't have noticed any difference. When you realized, it was already too late. Our purpose was achieved." Natalie pointed at him, exclaiming, "Just as I suspected." "You're a bit slow, aren't you? It's only after the poison's been neutralized that you've come to your senses. With your intelligence, you wouldn't stand a chance against Uncle Shawn. He's clever, cunning, and highly deceptive. Shawn actually entrusted such an important and dangerous task to you. Wasn't he afraid of any accidents or you being discovered?" Joshua stood tall. "I'm not just anyone. This was a trivial matter." Natalie was so infuriated that her face was contorting. After all her planning, she was defeated by a 4-year-old child. "Who are you?" Natalie continued to stare at him. "Joshua, is Zoe truly your grandmother? From the first day you moved into the Lifting family, Aram was exceptionally attentive to you. I've never seen him favor and care for any child as much as you." "Aram hasn't told you, has he?" "No, I've asked him, but he refused to tell me." She knew that Joshua's identity was exceptional. Furthermore, she remembered one evening when she had witnessed Aram taking Joshua to see Gale. Subsequently, Gale picked up Joshua and left. "Aram is quite reliable," Joshua nodded, looking at Gale. "Big beauty, do I need to tell the bad lady my true identity now?" Gale wanted to pinch his ears again. Chapter 1477. Why did he have to tell Natalie so much? He even confessed everything. Mary and Peter were both more shocked than the other, completely dumbfounded. No one had expected that Joshua was the one who poisoned Natalie. Even Gale herself, when she found out, was shocked, and she had a heated argument with Shawn. "All right, no need to talk anymore, young man." Gale pulled him closer and covered his mouth while whispering, "Shh, be quiet, okay?" If it weren't for Peter and Mary's presence, Gale would not have been this gentle. Kids could be really naughty. "I just thought it would be nice to let Natalie know the truth. Otherwise, she would be in the dark, not understanding how she got poisoned," Joshua responded. "I will thank you on behalf of her," Gale replied. "You're welcome, Big Beauty." Gale took several deep breaths to calm herself down. She could not afford to get angry. It would make her look bad. It was not good for her health. She reminded herself that Joshua was her own son. Her dad and mom were there, so she couldn't discipline him in front of them. Gale looked at the bodyguards and said, "You, take Natalie away." "Yes, Mrs. Wood." The bodyguards stepped forward, one on each side, escorting her away. She was not very willing, stubbornly resisting and digging her heels in, but her strength could not compete with the two burly bodyguards. It was all Joshua's fault. Otherwise, she would have successfully taken Mary hostage and used her as a bargaining chip. Joshua had to ruin it by barging in and disrupting her plans. That bratty child repeatedly ruined everything. Did she have to give up now, just like that? Natalie was far from content. It was a rare opportunity, and she could not afford to wait any longer. It was now or never. Joshua, whose mouth was covered, could only blink his eyes at Natalie. In return, Natalie glared at him. She still could not accept that she had been outsmarted by a child. How could Shawn entrust such a critical task to a child? Who was Joshua really? A sudden realization dawned on her. "I know who you are. You're Gale's son, aren't you?" Natalie shouted. She had been too preoccupied. She had been focused on how to take a hostage, someone important to Gale, who would be with her in hell and share her fate. So she selected Mary. Chapter 1478. Natalie had been constantly scheming about how to get another chance to get close to Mary and snatch a fruit knife. She had completely overlooked how Joshua addressed Mary. It was only then that Natalie realized that Gale referred to Mary as his grandmother. Since Mary was Gale's biological mother, it meant only Gale's son had the privilege to call Mary his grandmother. Peter also referred to himself as Joshua's grandfather. It was all so clear. Natalie had only just figured it out. No wonder Joshua mocked her for being foolish. Gale remained silent but signaled the guards to continue removing Natalie. However, Natalie began resisting more fiercely and was not as cooperative as before. "I will know the truth before I die. Gale, is he your son? You have a son you've been hiding, don't you? Why don't you dare to admit it? You don't even recognize your son," Natalie exclaimed. She struggled while yelling, refusing to let go. She grabbed onto the bedpost, refusing to leave. When the bodyguards tried to drag her away, they ended up moving both her and the bed. Mary was still lying on the bed, and the shifted bed startled her. "Ah!" Mary cried out. The bodyguards could only stop, and one by one they carefully pried Natalie's fingers loose. She had clamped down hard, and there were audible cracking sounds as some of her fingers broke. "Stop! Stop! Don't hurt her!" Mary covered her mouth, breathing heavily. "Her fingers could be broken. Please stop." She could not handle the situation and was even more unable to accept the sight of Natalie being treated so roughly in her presence. The bodyguards had no choice but to stop. "Mary, we are just following orders." Natalie's fingers had indeed been broken, but she did not care about the pain. Through her intense struggle, she had temporarily stirred Mary's compassion, which allowed her to stay in the room. She had a chance to take someone hostage from this group of people, whether it was Mary, Peter, or even Gale. They were all excellent choices. Natalie kept glaring at Joshua, that young boy who had lived with a Lefting family from the start. The boy she had looked down upon was Gale's son. Gale had two children. It was undeniable that Nicole was Shawn's daughter. So, who was Joshua's father? Was it also Shawn? Or did Joshua have a different father? One who lived with Gale all these years? Chapter 1479. Gale spoke softly. Natalie, Joshua is my son, and there's nothing I won't admit. I've never had any intention to hide him. If I wanted to keep it from you, the bodyguards would have taken you away the moment Joshua walked in. They wouldn't have let you stay in the ward, overhearing our conversations. Joshua did not shy away from calling them Grandma and Grandpa. It was evident to anyone what the family dynamics were. Natalie had simply taken a moment to grasp the situation. He's actually... Natalie's chest heaved dramatically. If I'd known earlier, Gale, I could have made my move much earlier. He was living in the Lefting family right under my nose. Joshua pulled down Gale's hand and said quickly, It's a pity that I got the upper hand, not the other way around, you wicked woman. Afterward, he pulled Gale's hand back up to cover his own mouth. Gale was speechless. Natalie felt embarrassed and wronged. Gale, you're so amazing. You left your son with me. What were you thinking? Are you not worried about his true identity getting exposed? Or is it? Natalie screeched. Or is he you and Orum's son? Before Gale could answer, Joshua once again pulled her hand down. Wrong, wrong. Although I like Uncle Orem a lot and support his relationship with Big Beauty, I'm definitely Uncle Shawn's son. He tried to cover his mouth again, but this time he received a resounding smack to the forehead. Natalie was left feeling utterly humiliated. Her eyes were about to pop out of her socket. Gale brought Nicole to Temperley Hall and left you with us. Does Orem know? Of course he knows. He's the one who planned your disappearance. He even took care of your son for you. Such a sacrifice. This is true love. Natalie resolved to take revenge on Joshua. Yes, Orem has always been aware that Joshua and Nicole are my children. Fortunately, he never revealed Joshua's true identity to you. Otherwise, Gale admitted, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Nicole was far away in the hospital, battling leukemia. Both Natalie and Winnie had plotted against Nicole. Joshua, on the other hand, had stayed with the Lefting family. If Natalie had wanted to make a move, it would have been easy. Natalie gritted her teeth. I missed a perfect opportunity. Gale, I finally understand now. You on the surface may appear harmless, gentle, and innocent, but you're more scheming than anyone. What have I done? Have I harmed anyone? Am I as malicious as you? Have I spared no one? Not even children? Gale asked in return. Why did you leave Joshua with Orem? To keep him close? Or maybe you wanted to deceive me like a fool. This way, no matter who you end up with, you'll have a way out. Regardless of who you're with, you'll always have a child of your own, won't you? Gale furrowed her brow in response. What nonsense are you talking about? That's exactly it. Now that you've chosen Shawn, Orem is of no use to you anymore. You'll just kick him to the curb and bring Joshua back. Then tell Shawn that you have another son with him. Natalie concluded. Chapter 1480. He would be overjoyed, surprised, and delighted. In prestigious families, offspring are always considered immensely important, especially sons. Gale, you're truly the ultimate winner. You gave birth to two children, and they're even twins. Gale was not inclined to offer any explanations. There was no need to explain herself to Natalie. If she had known that Joshua would come over, Gale would never have arranged for Mary and Natalie to meet. I don't care however you want to think about it. You'd better obediently leave with the bodyguards. Go back to where you came from. It might save you some future misery, Gale said. Natalie clenched her teeth fiercely. Why? Why do you get to... Why? Just when I thought you had reached the pinnacle of life, you delivered a fatal blow to me, proving that you have an even better life, that you possess even more, things I could never attain no matter how hard I tried. Shawn loves you, and Aurum loves you. You still have two children by your side. You have boundless wealth and honor. Jealousy no longer describes Natalie's feelings toward Gale. At first, at the jewelry exhibition, Shawn bought the crown and presented it to Gale in front of everyone. Originally, Aurum had intended to buy it and give it to Natalie. Natalie could have been the center of attention, envied by all the women in this city. However, Gale had suddenly stolen the limelight, and Aurum could not compete with Shawn. If Shawn set his sights on something, he would not blink an eye while spending any amount to buy it, especially if it was meant to win his lady's smile. From that point on, the seeds of jealousy had firmly taken root in Natalie. Later, Aurum's close relationship with Gale only intensified her dislike for her, culminating in the cliff-jumping incident. Natalie had assumed Gale had permanently disappeared from this world. Why should she care about a dead person? However, her peaceful days lasted only 4 years. From the moment Gale returned with Nicole to City, Natalie's life took a complete turn for the worse. First, Aurum started looking after Gale, ignoring her. Then Aurum proposed to break off their engagement, which angered her and led her to a frenzied sequence of revenge. Was Natalie merely jealous? No, it went far beyond that. She clearly saw the growing and increasingly noticeable gap between her and Gale. No matter how hard she tried, she would never measure up to her. She was unable to change her circumstances. She had no chance of winning. She could only employ various unsavory tactics to shorten that gap. She gazed at Gale with fierce determination. Her eyes filled with intense hatred. What else do you have that I don't know about, Gale? Let's say it all at once. Rip off the band-aid. Don't keep provoking and torturing me little by little, Natalie inquired, slowly edging closer to her. Gale responded calmly. Why should I tell you? Are you planning to continue with Shawn or start a new life with Aurum? You're hopping between two men, reveling in your jealousy and envy for you, aren't you? As she inquired, Natalie gradually moved closer to Gale.